Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. This is Property Management 101, and today's video we'll be talking about the best practices for having a good relationship with your tenants. This video will apply to any demographic type or asset type. Now, here are 4 things that you can do to ensure you maintain and have a good relationship with your tenants. Number 1, you really want to make sure you're making a great first impression. Now, a lot of you may be thinking what I'm just referring to is when you meet them for the first time. This is true, and this is going to be a big part of that first impression, but I'm also referring to the first impression of them seeing where they'll be living, the actual unit they'll be living in. It'll be really important that that first day that they move into the apartments, they see actually from the exterior all the way up into their apartments that is a very high standard of how the apartment and the unit was given to them. If it's in poor condition, you're really saying to that resident, this is a situation where we feel this is an acceptable standard, and that's not the best relationship start that you would want to have with that resident. You really want to make sure that they know that you have a high standard, that that's enforced, and this will really help the long-term relationship by having a unit that is well maintained and delivered to them in a very good condition. One of the common mistakes I've unfortunately seen far too often on the single family side of the industry, I've seen where an owner may be responsible in between the time that residents move out to when residents move in. Maybe that owner saying, I will, take care of the exterior with a landscaping company I have. I'm going to be performing the turn, whatever that is. In some management companies and markets, that's very common. So the downside is, though, what I've seen is an owner may elect to really have a high standard and really do a good job upkeeping the property while it's on the market, but once an application and lease is signed, they tend to pull back on those things to really save a buck or two. And unfortunately, that is not something I would recommend, because now when that resident moves in, the property is given to them in a much different way than they toured and saw the unit. So you could see where this almost seems like a little bit of a bait and switch, and not necessarily to the standard that they were shown in. It's kind of a little bit of trickery, and they just feel that this could be a situation that they can't trust the landlord, right? So it's really important to make sure that that unit, both from an exterior and interior perspective, is in tip-top shape and maybe even better than they saw the unit when they move into the unit from a condition standpoint. The other dynamic to keep in mind on the single family side of the industry is oftentimes for certain smaller companies, the property manager may also be the individual that's touring the prospect in the home or meeting them while they're applying. So it's really important that you keep that in mind, because every prospect or every applicant may be someone that's living in the home for a number of years. And so if you go in with a mindset of, hey, this prospect or this applicant, maybe someone living in this home for years, and if you treat them that way, like every prospect could potentially be a long-term relationship, I think you're going to have a much better opportunity to maintain and build a strong relationship with that tenant. The second best practice that I would recommend to maintain and build a strong relationship with your tenants is communication. I know this sounds obvious and very repetitive if you see my other videos, but I mention this a lot because it's such an important dynamic in the property management space to have. And it's one of the components today we'll be talking about to help maintain and build a strong relationship with your tenants. Very often when I talk to property managers and operators, they feel they're doing a better job with communication than they actually are. And here are some areas that I would strongly recommend, if you're not communicating to your residents, that you are doing so to really build and maintain a strong relationship. You're going to want to send out rent reminders. You're going to want to let them know when the office is closed or have limited hours outside the norm. You want to make sure you're informing everyone of upcoming unit inspections. You also want to make sure you're informing them of things like pool openings and closings, moving condition report reminders, work order delays, work order follow-ups, post-move-in check-ins, staff changes, local events, staff PTO, rentable item availability, move-in packet information, amenity schedule. And those are just a few that I can name, and there's many more that could be provided as good examples, but this is at least a good blueprint for you if you're not already performing these things as far as part of your communication, that you add this as part of your ongoing regular communication with your residents to build a strong relationship. When I'm referring to improving and having a good relationship based off communication, I'm not just referring to the communication that's stated verbally. I'm also referring to some other angles as well when it comes to communication, like signage, emails, letters to doors, things like, maybe voicemails. Anything that can improve the communication and allow everyone to be on the same page is what I'm referring to. I think it's really important for every property to use different methods of communication to ensure that you're really having a well-rounded system, to ensure everything is getting clearly stated out there. A video that may be helpful when it comes to email blasts for you is one of my previous videos that's titled Email Blast, and I'll post the link to that video in the video description. If you're enjoying this video and learning something new, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. And the third thing that'll help you build and maintain a strong relationship with your tenants is don't bend early. What I'm referring to by don't bending early is early in that relationship, you don't want to show or come across as that it's okay to bend the rules. I often see an example of this is during the application process, the property manager or maybe the management company as a whole may bend the rules slightly compared to what is outlined in their application process to allow someone who's maybe on the line when it comes to being an approved applicant become approved by them bending the rules. This really shows the wrong message to the resident that it is okay, acceptable, and common practice to bend the rules to kind of get the result that they're looking for. And there's lots of other risks that I can mention regarding why this is not a good idea, but from the tenant relationship standpoint, this is just a very bad start. Like I mentioned before, you're really just telling them that it's okay to bend the rules, and this is not the start of a good relationship that'll be built on trust and respect. And the last thing that is very helpful to build and maintain a strong relationship with your tenants, stick to your word. I know this sounds really easy, right? Everyone sticks to their word in every scenario, but keep in mind, I'm referring to a couple different things. I'm referring to the lease. I'm referring to ensure that you're giving proper notices for notice to entry and other things. I'm also referring to timeframes. If you have, for example, a 48-hour turnaround time for all work orders submitted to be responded to or completed, make sure your entire team is following this as well. And if you have a meeting with a resident, make sure you're making that meeting or providing them the option to make that meeting. So giving them opportunities to meet with you shows them that, hey, you're good to your word, and they may not necessarily like everything that you have to say, but as long as you're sticking to your word, they're going to at least respect you and understand your position. Maybe they won't understand, but at the very least, they're going to respect that you're giving them the honest and direct answer, rather than telling them something they just want to hear to later change that answer. So it's really important you're consistently sticking to your word when it comes to deadlines, timeframes, meetings, the lease itself, any language that's been provided in writing, maybe it's a move-in packet or an email. So making sure you're sticking to your word in every case will be very beneficial for you and that resident for the long term. If you've not already done so, please watch my disclosure video as well as my why I do this video, and I'll provide a link in the description as well to those two videos. And if you enjoyed this video and learned something new, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. If you have any questions about this video or any of my videos, feel free to comment. I'll be happy to address it for you. Happy leasing!